Okay, and hey everyone, welcome back to the Difference Maker podcast. You got your hosts Matt and Chris Calderoni here. Quickly before we get started, just a little kind of reminder, please make sure if you have anybody that you feel that can really benefit from these episodes, please share the podcast. Please make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification bell. I mean, we've again been receiving so much support. The podcast is growing, which we love. And our goal right here, our mission right here is to make sure that we can help and impact as many people as possible when it comes to resilience. So super excited for this week. Just some quick housekeeping from the other week. We've kind of been a little bit in and out of the podcast. Chris had COVID the other week, which kind of put us, a bit of a step behind because we had to make sure he was feeling good. And then we've got a super exciting marketing launch that's going to be starting, I believe, in the next week or so. And we really had to double down on that and put all of our hands on deck, we'll call it, for that little project right now. So we apologize. We missed doing the podcast. We love doing these episodes, so we're glad to be back this week.
And I was going to say, one thing that you guys can do is simply sign up to the Molliteum Insider. It's our email newsletter. It comes out once a week, once on Mondays, one on Saturday for anything that you guys missed. And it's a great way to catch up and stay focused, or not stay focused, but catch up on what we're doing. And
to stay focused too.
Yeah,
Training.
well, that as well. Yeah, we have the training as well, but just any updates and stuff like that if you guys are missing, it's a great way to stay informed. And also, I mean, ask us any questions, because one of the things that we do want to do is answer the questions that you guys have in these podcasts and even in blog posts and on our social media. So there's an option in that newsletter, in the emails, for you to ask us questions. And if we can, we will answer them.
Well, and just to add on to that kind of point, we actually will answer them like we say in the email. We're going to be making sure to take any kind of inquiries that you might have or whatever it might be to really make sure, like, we're going to try and answer as many as we can on each episode once they start coming through, and making sure that we can kind of have your questions that you have and get right to the bottom of them. So super excited for that, but let's dive into this week's topic. So the other week, or we'll say last couple weeks, what we dove into before we had to take our little COVID break and our marketing break was how to really get selfish to be selfless, what that really means, how that really impacts you, how that can really make sure that you're on a path where you're absolutely crushing it and making sure that you're helping your team in the best possible way. And we said in that episode, this is an episode 1 of 2, where the following week, which is now this week that we're in, we're going to be teaching leaders how to create and cultivate a culture that is selfish to be selfless so you can build a resilient team. This week, we're going to go into exactly that. We're going to show you exactly how, if you're a leader, how you can exactly build this in your team. Because here's the reality. I know that you want to be a leader who is able to bring your team to the promised land. I know that you want to take your organization to new heights. I know you want to be somebody who is able to really do it the right way. And here's the reality. You're often not taught how to cultivate this stuff. You're often not taught how to properly do it. And it leaves you frustrated because you've got top high-end performers who don't answer the bell the way you need them to. You know they're underperforming. You know that they could do more. And we're going to teach you how to get more out of them right now. We have a simple 3-step process we're going to show you in this episode. It's going to be a fantastic one. But I can't wait to dive right into it. Chris, do you have anything before?
I was going to say, yeah, it's just something that makes it a lot easier for everyone to just kind of communicate, if everyone's on the same page. Like last week, we did talk about the individual coming into an organization and being selfish to be selfless and working for the team. But when you also have that leader that kind of reciprocates and also allows that individual to kind of build and flourish with you as their sounding board, like that's fantastic. And if you have that background and that knowledge, I mean, you make them that much better, right?
Absolutely. So. And even to go into that, I just wanted to say before we dive into the first topic of this topic, we did make an entire blog post about it last week. We created one. Go check it out. We'll link it down below in the description. That way you can have the written version of it as well. But get out your journals, get out your notebooks, whatever you need to take notes, and let's start with this session. So, what does it really mean to build a culture around getting selfish to be selfless? Now, again, we covered this last week in a blog post. We covered this in a previous podcast episode, but to reiterate it, exactly what it means. Getting selfish to be selfless simply means that you're working harder on yourself than you do your job so that you're able to give impact and give value to the people in your workplace and you can help the team win. Essentially, it's becoming so damn good at your role that you're able to do that role so well that you're able to impact the team on a level greater than anybody else. And as a result, you have a bunch of people that come together who are working on themselves, who are doing their job well, who are mastering their craft, essentially. And when you bring them together, you've got a team of individuals who do their own roles really well. and move as one unit when you have these roles come together.
And they feel safe doing it too, right? Like
Absolutely.
you feel like you're part of that team. And like Matt just said, we will get into that. So very important, starts from the top and let it go throughout the team.
Yeah, and this is a topic we want to talk about too, because again, there's a way to do it, right? There's a way to promote it where you're not favoring certain individuals on your team or in your organization. There's a way to do it to make sure that even, the we'll call it the more disadvantaged players when it comes to talent or employees are able to also flourish as well. Because what I think we forget about a lot of times in organizations is that every single individual has a role if the leader is willing to find one for them. But the point is this: you need to be able to bring everybody to a place of certainty. And that's the first topic I want to talk about, because here's the thing, and here's the way to picture it. At the end of the day, high performers are individuals who are extremely certain of themselves, right? They know exactly what they need to do, which puts them into an absolutely certain state. And because they're into an absolute certain state, they have a story that they're following or telling themselves in their own head that allows them to be a top performer. So the story could be, I'm somebody that knows how to crush it at my job, and I know exactly what I'm going to do. And as a result of that, they tap into certain strategies. So certain strategies, meaning that the strategies they use now are ones where they're not holding anything back and they're going all in. Here's what happens, though, when you have an individual who is not certain, okay? You have an individual who's unsure of themselves, right? They're not in a certain state. As a result, they start telling themselves a story that they're unsure of what they need to do. And as a result of that, they start tapping into strategies that are extremely hesitant, and they don't perform to their peak levels. And this might be where your team is. So the question becomes, how do we reverse that? Well, this whole concept of, preaching the message of getting selfish to be selfless will solve this. But what we want to give you right now is a way to promote that and an understanding of why this works. So let's start with the first topic, which is psychological safety. For anybody who doesn't really know what this means or doesn't have an idea of what psychological safety is, this is when you're able to essentially create a culture where you are promoting people to take risks, you're promoting people to try new things, you're promoting people to realize that it doesn't matter if you get something wrong on your first try. All that matters is at the end of the day, we get to the result somehow. And you're promoting a culture where nobody feels like their job is at risk, where you're making them feel insecure about themselves. You're essentially creating a culture of certainty. Now, here's where we notice the high performance world gets this wrong. And this was a great debate actually I was having with one of our cousins, actually in the backyard at Dad's house the other weekend. And it was, the high performance world is a funny one because it often comes off as if once you get to that team you want to play on or to that organization, all of a sudden now it's you got to prove it. When in reality, getting on the team was proving it enough. You just need to do your job well enough now. That's all you need to do. You need to do your role, right? You need to perform your role well. The problem and the culture that I've noticed is something that's pushed a lot in the high performance world, though, is once you get here, you've got to prove it now, and there's all this pressure on you, and somebody can take your job any day. And although that's true, I understand where that hardcore message comes from. The reality is, I'm going to frame it this way. Let's pretend in the sports world, you go and bring in a, $5 million a year player, okay? And in that $5 million a year player, you're expecting them to do fantastic things. But here's how the sports world works, and I know this is how the corporate world works as well from doing work with them. All of a sudden now, instead of saying, how do I give this individual the best environment to flourish, to do their thing, to crush it, it turns to now they're in an environment where they're getting their $5 million. They got to prove they're worth it now. And all of a sudden now you got people who put immense amounts of pressure on these people who are getting paid more. And I know you're sitting there saying, well, Matt, they're getting paid enough money. But the truth is, if you just purchased an asset for $5 million a year, why wouldn't you want to create an environment that allows that $5 million asset to flourish? Why wouldn't you? Why are you trying to make that $5 million asset prove it instead of giving them a path to say, here's the best way you can crush it?
And then you know what happens? The people that are also on that team, they mimic that culture.
Absolutely.
Right? And then it becomes just that cesspool of people getting on each other, and it's terrible. Like right now I have a player who he's on a soccer team in Italy. He's playing there right now, and he's Canadian. He's definitely someone that feels like he has to prove himself more. He's going into an environment where it's a bunch of Europeans and a couple North Americans. And the North Americans, he was telling me actually today, the North Americans, they get double that treatment, where if there's a mistake, normally it's high standard, of course, you're playing there, but because he makes that mistake, it's, well, you don't know what you're doing, right? As opposed to, well, you made a mistake and people just get on you for making a mistake. It's double that now, right? So it just creates that culture that you don't necessarily want on your team. And it makes it a lot harder, I think, for the individual to earn that respect of their peers and the people around them.
Well, let's talk about what it does, because I think this is an important part to understand of why this psychological safety is so important. And then we can talk about how getting selfish to be selfless promotes this. So when you have a culture that's unsafe, what you essentially create, and we see this all the time in the corporate world, we see this all the time in the sports world, is you then start to create a culture where people are not positively competing against one another and pushing each other to say, hey, you can do more, you can do better, you can be this, you can be that. Instead, what they're doing is they're looking for shortcomings in their own teammates and trying to take advantage of those shortcomings to be, quote unquote, the best on the team, because that's what's going to impress the coach or the boss. That's an issue. That's toxic, because what ends up happening is then you have no togetherness, right? You've got no ability, like you said with the soccer player, to make an error, when we know that creativity and breaking through to the next level requires you to make errors, requires you to try new things, requires you to push the limit, requires you to try things that are outside of your comfort zone. And as a result of that, now that you don't have that togetherness and you don't have people who have one another's back, here's what happens. You're letting your people get literally become sacrificial lambs one at a time each week.
And you just create stuff like, sometimes it's not even that. It's just people just like to complain and they want to find that reason. It's petty stuff, but that's just, that's how people are.
Absolutely. So here's why this selfish to be selfless helps this psychological safety. Think about this. So let's go back to the $5 million a year player scenario. Let's pretend let's pretend in the most ideal high performing world, you go up to this high performer and you say, hey, listen, the culture here is very simple. Yes, we brought you in. You're making $5 million a year, but here's the truth. We just want you to do your job really well, right? Bill Belichick, do your effing job, right? Okay. So here's what we're going to do, player. You're going to come in, and the culture we have here is very simple. We need you to make sure that every single month you have something you're working on so that you can build confidence behind your skills. And we need to make sure that you know exactly what your strengths are, so in performance you can use them. We're going to put you in that situation. We're going to put you in that role. We're going to put you in that environment, and you're going to go do your thing. Versus, you need to prove yourself and figure it out. That's crap. That's literally, that is literally setting somebody up for failure. And if you're a coach listening to this, or a leader listening to this, who maybe has that old school belief, let me tell you something. It doesn't work. History has shown that time and time and time again. Let's look at a case study. Brazil, back in the day, I believe it was the 80s World Cup or something like that. One of those World Cups when they started walking out, remember holding hands? Right? Right away. Psychological safety. Why did they hold hands? Or it might have been the 70s. But why did they hold hands? To promote psychological safety, to promote togetherness. Right? We're all equal. We're all coming out holding hands for the team of Brazil. Great. Let's look at notoriously winning sports teams. What do? There's a togetherness. Organizations that are like unicorns, right? Unicorns are ones that last for years. If you read that book, Built to Last, they talk about like the multiple different companies like the Walmarts and so on and whatever it is. But why? There is a culture that is instilled there of togetherness. I know sometimes to the media it doesn't seem like that, but the truth of the matter is everybody there is psychologically safe to do their job. You know exactly what you're going in to do your job. You know exactly how you're coming out. The problem is in the high-performing world, we often build this mentality of everybody's got to be on edge all the time. That's what high performers are. It's a culture of get in and be the top, when really it's like the way we get to the top is simple. Get a bunch of people together. Make sure they're all confident. Bring them together in a performance. Give them one goal to fight towards. Think about that. All a high-performing team is a bunch of individuals who are so sure of themselves that when they come together to do their job and they have their roles, they're able to execute those roles effectively.
Yeah, and it's not about like even being soft or not being able to handle those conversations. Like every day getting pounded with those conversations, yeah, someone's going to break and someone's not going to like that for sure. Right. But it's just like there's a different way of doing things where if you create that, like for example, you create that psychological safety in your team, right? You can have then those tough conversations.
Yeah.
You can do that. And it's much more effective that way because people know, and this is one of the biggest things that I kind of hate with youth sports. It's all the politics that go into it. And people don't understand when a coach is trying to force them out and when they're trying to legitimately give them feedback, but it's in a tough manner. If you have that culture in that environment where the player feels safe, the coach feels safe to kind of voice their opinion, like it works obviously both ways, but you get that much more out of that conversation and that player. That's tough.
But let me stop you right there, though, because you hit a very good point on the head. In safe cultures, you can have tough conversations.
Yeah, no one's soft, man. No one's soft and tough in those.
No. A safe culture means, listen, I'm going to try something. I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to fall. And my teammate's going to have my back and my ass when I do fall. My coach is going to call me out and tell me the things he needs or she needs to tell me or they need to tell me because I am somebody who is, they know that I want to get to the top. They know that I want to get to the top. They're telling me things that will allow me to get to the top. That's what it is in a psychologically safe culture. What it's not, though, is throwing each other under the bus and saying, oh my gosh, so-and-so is the reason for this issue and da-da-da-da-da. It doesn't work that way. In psychologically safe cultures, when you're promoting people to work on themselves, that means that the leader has to have an understanding of what that person is trying to work on. What's their end goal? What's their personal end goal? I was talking to one of the corporations we work with literally just yesterday about this. And I said, one of the most powerful things that you can do is ask every single individual, what are your own personal goals? And then show them that they can accomplish those goals within your team, right? Hey, we're fighting for the championship this year, but here's the reality. By fighting for the championship together, we're also going to make sure that you're building those skills that you need so you can get to the NCAA level. Hey, we're making sure that you can build those skills that you need to get to the professional level. All you need to do is work on those skills so you can get to the pro level, and we're going to make sure that you use those skills here so we can get the championship. Does that sound like a good trade-off for you? Sounds great, coach. All right, thank you. It really is that simple.
I mean, your job is to win.
Your job's to win.
Right?
Absolutely it is. And that's why, like, it's not, like Chris said, a matter of creating a culture that's soft. Psychologically safe cultures are some of the notoriously toughest cultures because they have high standards. And what you hold people accountable to when it comes to this are values, not results.
Yeah, you don't let people get away with like half standards. Like,
right.
It's, you could have a team of nobodies, you could have a psychologically safe culture. And man, they can crush any team that has the top end players if it's not safe. Like it's so simple, but people don't do it.
Well, and let's talk about a real thing that I think we forget to look at with leaders. And leaders, this is on you because I know you're tuning into this episode. One of the worst things you can do as a leader is start fearing to lose your job. Right?
Now you're in what? Job
preservation mode. 101. So let's look at something. I'm going to case study this. So anybody who follows soccer and looks at Chelsea, right? Thomas Tuchel.
He just got canned.
Yeah. Okay. So anybody that doesn't know soccer and football, whatever you want to call it, on your end of the world, Chelsea's a big soccer team. They're a great soccer team. They just fired their head coach. Here's what happened, though. A couple years ago, head coach comes in, literally given a team that he have no input on, went and won one of the biggest tournaments of club soccer stature, the Champions League that year. First year, right? Okay.
I believe so.
I believe so. Somebody fact check us who's listening, but my point is he comes in, he does it a lot quicker than the majority. Okay. There was a much different demeanor with Thomas Tuchel that year where he just came in and he had nothing he was trying to prove. He had nobody he was trying to, put pressure on. It was just come in and save this team. Come in and you're better than the last guy. That's what we know. He came in, no pressure, let his players do their thing, yada, yada, yada. They win. Okay? They go right to the top. Year 2 comes. Not as successful. Year 3 comes this year. Within the first couple weeks of the season now, first month of the season, see you later. And if you watch if you listen, and watch his interviews and you listen to his verbiage in those interviews, you can tell this was a man who started to fear his safety for his job. And leaders, I'm telling you, one of the worst things that you can do is start worrying about your job and putting that first. Because the truth of the matter is this, and we talk about this as when we coach our coaches, when we coach individuals, when we, train our coaches, If you put all of your energy into doing what's in the best interest of the individuals you're working for, aka your players or your people, you don't have to worry about losing your job. It's true, right? We have a 93% retention rate of our clients who sign back year after year after year after year. We have some clients going on who have been working with us since the first year of our business. Why? All we care about is doing what's in the absolute best interest of our people. We don't sit there saying between each other, do you think they're going to resign? Do you think this person's going to resign? It's just like, do your job, know what they need, and give it to them.
Yeah. And it becomes that much more easy. And I mean, just you take the stress off of yourself. Like,
absolutely.
I understand when like you're in that job preservation mode, like once you hit that, it can be very difficult to get out of it. But it's a lot of the stuff that we're mentioning right now. If you you have to look at it in a different way from the beginning.
Yes.
And when you do get into that job preservation mode, like again, it can be difficult to get out of it. But if you do focus on the product that you're trying to get out of your team, like the players you put on the ice, the team that you put on the field, the project team that you put together for I don't know, a project that you have in the corporate side of things, like if you focus on them and getting the best out of them, because like you can't do everything yourself, right?
No.
You have to allow the people to work for you, and you have to guide them. So,
but that's the thing, is being a leader who's also like, you're a visionary, right? If you're a coach of a team, you're a visionary. You have to understand that the people that you bring in are to make your vision come to life, which means that you should be selecting individuals to try and give them the best chance to win.
And those tough conversations of that you normally have, we're not saying that they need to go away, but you need to set up a team that can deal with those tough conversations.
Yes, we're actually promoting you to have tough conversations. We're saying how to do it.
Like that, honestly, to be completely honest, I think that's the only way that teams really win, is through having those tough conversations 100%. But if you don't have a team that can handle those tough conversations, and like, you're going nowhere. You're going nowhere.
And so let's talk about this and quickly, because we're going to get into the tough combos right now. It's funny that you say that, because literally we're going to go through meeting 1, meeting 2, and then like how to promote the psychological safety. But here's the first thing, because I want to touch on a point. So we said don't hold accountable to results. Here's the truth. You need to see results as a byproduct, right? What you're going to hold accountable to, this is a bonus point. Please note this down. You need to get very clear on your team values. Maximum 5, no less than 3. What does your team stand by that allows them to be great? This can be, and I want you to do me a favor. Please take it deeper than like quote unquote work ethic. Don't like, that's crap. A better one is like set the tone, right? In everything, how you communicate, how you work, how you give back to the community, how you train in the gym, how you train here, how you work in the, whatever it is. A great value, set the tone. Because here's the thing, if you come up with 3 values to 5 values that are like that, and you combine them together, set the tone plus, let's say, never let anybody fall, plus, let's say, always fight, are your 3 values. Those 3 things together, set the tone, never let anyone fall, always fight. You put those together, you damn well better believe if you select the talent, which that is your job as a coach, and you make them all operate under those 3 values, you will never lose. Right? That's the reality. But what do we see a lot of coaches do? I got to win. Okay, so now you're projecting the pressure onto your own players. You're not allowing them to make mistakes, and you're not promoting this broaden and build model that starts to happen when you promote psychological safety, which means you're teaching your team how to solve problems together. Instead, what you're doing is saying, hey, guys, I know that part of this process is losing, and I'm not letting you lose. That's the issue. Part of this process is losing. It's making mistakes. It's learning from the mistakes, reflecting together, and moving forwards. So what bonus point number 1, get very clear on your values before you get into these. So let's talk about how to promote then psychological safety. So meeting number 1 you're going to have is what we call a personal development sit down. This is almost unheard of in the high performance world. Why? Because everybody likes to focus, like I said, on results. But here's the truth of the matter. If you create a culture that's selfish to be selfless, that means that you need to give your team things to work on each month personally. So what is a personal development sit down? A personal development sit down is when you are giving somebody something, a habit to work on that's going to optimize them in their personal life. Why? Something as simple as getting your sleep on track will drastically help increase the energy of that player on your team who might not be giving their best effort. But we don't often look at things like that in a high performance world, right? What about in the sales culture and corporate culture? I know this from literally working with the team right now. One of the biggest things we had to start talking about the people with: when to wake up and when to go to sleep. Insanity, right? But the truth of the matter is, you need to have a personal development sit down, a one-on-one meeting that lasts somewhere from 5 to 10 minutes with every individual on your team. And you need to say, okay, what is one area of your life right now outside of work? Don't worry about work. And we'll tell you why to separate these in a sec, that you need to better so that you can be your best self. And they might look at you and say, I need to better the relationship with my spouse. Great. How can I help with that? What do you need to do? What resources do you need to look into? It is your job as a leader not to have the answers, but to help them get clear. Big difference. You don't need to walk out of there and say, oh, this is the marriage counseling course you need to go to. Instead, it can be, okay, great. Well, why don't we make it a point that by the end of this month, you're signing up for or this week, sorry, you're signing up for some kind of marriage counseling, if that's the case. That's just an example, right? Or if you're, again, on the sleep side, it could be as simple as, okay, you know what? Like, let's really why don't we put together a bedtime routine for you that can get down? And if you don't know how to do that, you can refer out. Oh, I was listening to this podcast that talked about sleep and da 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 da. You need to watch this, and next week together we're going to sit down and put this together. But the reason that this is important is because you're focused on optimizing the individual, not the performer. So a personal development sit down must happen once a month, and you must make these regular, just like you are with target setting for performance. Now, here's the thing. The reason that you're going to keep these separate from performance-based sit downs, which we'll talk about in a sec, is because of this. I often find a lot of leaders who go in with the right intention to talk about working on a skill and end up mixing results in. That's an issue. Why? Because your high performers, be it athletes or employees, will only listen to the results that you give them. They're high performers, right? And you could be telling them, oh, you're doing this really, really, really well. But your performance results are off. And then all of a sudden, everything you just said goes in one ear, out the other, and they only hear that one thing. You're not performing the way you need to. So once you have this personal development meeting, you should be having it once every month, right? Very simple, just a regular sit down, 5 to 10 minutes. Some will go longer, that's fine, where you're helping the individual get clear on exactly one thing to optimize in their personal life so they can be better in their professional life. The following week, now you need to make sure that you have your performance results meeting. This is where you can start to talk about it. And your performance results sit down is a 5 to 10 minute sit down as well, right? Or however long you want to take. It's up to you. You're the leader. And that's where you can talk specifically about the performance results. Oh, you're underperforming right now. Here are ways that we can help with that. Oh, you're performing very well right now. Here are ways that you can help your teammates do that. But the point is, you need to make sure they have one thing in that performance-based meeting they're walking away with working on. So let's give some examples. If you are a sports coach, let's pretend you're an American football coach. Maybe you're sitting down with your wide receiver and you're saying, hey, we need you to be faster out of your routes. We're going to specifically work on with you this month your footwork. Done. That's it. Okay, coach, thank you. Okay, no problem. You go communicate that with the team. How much clearer is that now? You're optimizing your $5 million asset, right? Now let's pretend you're in the corporate sector. And let's pretend you're in sales. Okay, you need to be better at closing. Okay, great. So here's what we're going to do. We're actually going to work on your phone closing for the next 30 days. One-on-one. Or we'll have somebody mentor you or shadow you or whatever it might be. But that's all we're going to focus on. Don't worry about anything else. Everything else, irrelevant to you. Just focus on this. Okay. Done. Right? And I know it sounds simple, but it really is, because here's what really ends up happening in high-performing cultures, especially when it comes to results. You tell somebody they need to get a specific result one week. The next week, you need them to get another. The next week, another. The next week, another. The next week, another. And then it goes all the way back to this certainty point that we talked about, right? Making sure that people know exactly what they're doing. Well, think about it. If I were to throw 10 different things at you across 5 weeks, that's 2 new things each week I need you to learn, right? That's hard. That's tough. That's not long-term mastery of a skill. When it comes to performance-based results, you need to realize it's about mastering a skill that individuals can use in performance so that they crush it.
Yeah, I think one of the easier ways to, or not easier ways, but the short of everything that you're saying is you got to be a master at helping people get clear. It's not that you always have to have all the answers, but you got to help them get clear on what that next step is.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of not leaders, but yeah, leaders, coaches. I think that's where a lot of people get it wrong, where like obviously you're working to get to this position. And once you finally get there, I think the idea is that, you know what, I can kind of kick back a little bit. I can let people work and stuff like that. When you have a responsibility to the people underneath you to help them get clear. And I think for a lot of leaders, they don't necessarily know what their next move is. And we're giving it to you right now, which is just help them get clear on what needs to be done and watch how much more efficient your team is underneath you.
Well, and that's a great point because I think coaches and leaders also forget that, you know, your job is actually very simple. It's not easy, it's simple because I sit in the same position as you, right? We both do. You need to have a vision of what you want to do that your team can follow. You need to have a strategy for each sector. So if you're in this, business world, it's going to be specific sectors to your business. If you're in the sports world, it's going to be specific offense, defense, whatever kind of sectors that are there, midfield for soccer. And then you just got to make sure that your people know exactly how to perform their role well. That's it.
And like it's needed. It's so needed because you have these athletes and these people underneath you all trying to get to where they want to go. And sometimes in that they get lost.
Well, hold on. And let's slow that down for a second. Actually, that's a great point. I think this is what we forget about a lot of the time too. High performing individuals who are worth lots of money and are great at what they do, they still need and want leadership. Studies on studies on studies show this, right? Like regularly show that they want the regular feedback. They want the leader to come in and help them and tell them what to do. Why? Because they realize that part of their success is being able to do that. I mean, the reality is this, coaches and leaders, if you don't help coach and lead them, they go find people outside of the workplace that can do that. And they shouldn't have to, right? Like, think about that for a second. Coach should be able to say, this month, we're working on this, specifically for performance. The next week, you should be able to come in and say, we're specifically working on this for your personal life. Go do it. And you should hold them accountable because the last part to this all, which is super important, you need unity with your coaching staff and your leadership staff. Why? Because often what ends up happening is leader will come in and say something, or head coach will, and all of a sudden your assistants or the people around you or the people on your team are talking about 20 different things. You also need clarity, and your team needs clarity, right? It's like Chris said, it all comes back to clarity. So here's how we suggest doing this now that you know. So remember, there's a personal development sit down that you want to have once a month, and there's also a performance-based sit down you want to have once a month. At the end of these meetings, what you want to do is have them walk away with one thing they are working on. That's it. So here's how we look at it. On the first Monday of the month, okay, you're going to have your personal development meeting. 5 to 10 minutes sit down the first Monday of the month. Then you're going to let a couple days pass, and on the first Wednesday of the month, you're going to make sure you have your performance-based meeting. Then on the Monday of each week for the rest of the month, for the next 4 weeks or however long the month is there, you're going to make sure to hold people accountable and have touch points. Holding accountable to the habit or the action, not the result. Right? Did you make more cold calls this week? Yep. Great. Did you find a way to make sure you got your health in check? Yep. Great. Then you can look at if you want the results. And how have those been working for you? Well, you know what, Matt? I realized that I'm actually not losing the weight I need to. Oh, no way. How do we need to solve this then? Well, I think I've got to get somebody that can help me with diet. Great. Let's do that. Let's meet next week and we'll talk about it. Okay, thanks. And what about performance? Yeah, the cold calling's working really well. Fantastic. It's simple, man. Like a lot of the times I see, especially when we come into organizations, we just set these expectations without realizing we have to guide. That's what our job is as a leader. We need to guide them. Your job is not to stand on the cover of every magazine and on every sports interview show or public station and say what your company vision is. That's definitely part of it. But your job, the nitty gritty, the day to day, and we know this, you've got to stay on your people, man. It's a development game. That's all it is, right? Even your high performers need development. It's simple. But the problem is, and it's outlandish in for me to even say it, in the high performance world, people forget that it's about people and developing people and helping people. It's not about anything more than that. So to recap this all today, to keep it simple, getting selfish to be selfless means you're working harder on yourself than you do your job. And as a result of that, when you're on a team, you now have 20 plus individuals who come together each week working toward one common goal. That creates psychological safety within your team. Bonus point number 1 for psychological safety: create values, 3 to 5 of them, that you hold people accountable to each and every minute. Right? Simple. To create psychological safety, you're going to have a personal development sit-down meeting once a month where you specifically talk about things in the person's life that will help them get optimized. Just one area. Don't go off and do 20 of them. One thing. It could be, I need to lose a bit of weight right now. Great. No problem, person X. Let me help you out. And you can have these conversations because the truth of the matter is this: you should have technically a safe culture if you're doing this, right? Number 2, go have a performance-based sit down every month as well, right? Set a performance target, give them one thing to work on. The goal of these 2 meetings, though, like we said, is to make sure that people have one action to go work on and walk away with. Just 30 days, work on this thing. Don't worry about anything else. Then finally, you want to have weekly touch points and follow-ups with them. This can last anywhere from 5 minutes to 2 minutes to 50 minutes to 20, whatever you want to decide as a leader. Up to you. The goal is this, though: get people clear. That's it. You don't need to have all the answers. Just get them clear on what to do next. That's it. Oh, I need to get a better nutrition coach. Great. Go find that. Oh, I need help better closing and cold calling here, and here. Great. We can pair you with person A who does that very, very well. Let's have you mentor, talk to person A. Okay, you can do that. Great. Let's go. Done. Your job as a leader is to make sure that people are constantly certain. That's it. If they're not, and you don't feel you can have these convos yet, and you're saying, well, Matt, I've actually been a jerk for the last X amount of years, and that's how people know me, you can reinvent yourself in the moment. Admit it. That's what psychologically safe cultures do. Hey, guys, I screwed up. Turning a new leaf. I realized I've done this wrong. Right? You pull your team together and you talk about it. Here's the new standard going forwards. We're going to have these meetings once a month, these meetings once a month. I'm holding you accountable to these values. We're going to make sure that we work on this together. Here's where we want to go. All I care about is you being sure of yourself, and I will do anything in my power to make sure that you can. You do that, and people will run through a freaking brick wall for you.
Yeah, I think the 2 major things anyone listening can take away from this is a psychologically safe culture and team is one where you can have those real and tough conversations. And second thing, if you're a leader, become a master of clarity.
Yes.
And again, not that you need to have all the answers, but sometimes it just needs to be a different perspective from someone that's like, you got someone that's in the fire, you're out of the fire. It's just a clear mind that sometimes they need. And that's all it really needs sometimes. So create that psychologically safe culture, have those tougher conversations. And I mean, your team isn't soft anymore.
And one more thing, there's a difference between being a jerk and having high standards, right? You can hold your team to high standards without being a jerk about it. You just have to create that psychologically safe culture. So hold accountable to the values, have your monthly target setting that you do in both sit downs, and then hold people accountable each week. That's all you need to do. Keep them clear. Keep that, position where, yes, we're fighting for a result, but my job is to make sure you know how to get there easiest. That's all it is. So anyways, difference makers, listen, we hope you like this episode. It's raw, it's rugged, it's real, it's the truth. We only want to give you guys the truth because we know that that's how you get the results you want. It sets you free. Please make sure, share the podcast with anybody that you feel needs this. Like, subscribe, click the notification bell, comment down below. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think we're in our rockers, off our rockers? What do you think?
And remember, if you guys have any questions, please subscribe to the Molliteum Insider. You can ask us questions there. And
yes, that's one last announcement actually we should put out. So every week, if you sign up to our Molliteum Insider, we actually have a SurveyMonkey link that comes out. You can write anything you want us to talk about when it comes to resilience. If you want to even check off and say, keep this anonymous, we will. If you say, hey, I want a shout out, we will. But the great thing is if you subscribe to the newsletter, we are having and taking comments so we can help you all the most. That's the goal. That's the mission. That's the impact of this podcast. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week, provided nobody catches COVID.